My girlfriend said, "If you don't like my friends, that's your problem," after they disrespected me all night. I said, "You're right." Then I solved my problem in a way that made her friends never speak to her again. I, 29M, thought I knew what disrespect looked like until I met my girlfriend's friends. What happened that night changed everything, and by the time I was done solving my problem, she learned that some bridges burn faster than others. My girlfriend and I had been together for 8 months. She was everything I thought I wanted: beautiful, successful, and popular. Maybe that last part should have been a warning sign. Her friend group was tight-knit, the kind that had known each other since college and acted like they owned whatever room they walked into. The first few times I met them, I chalked up their behavior to protective friend syndrome. They'd make little jokes at my expense, exclude me from conversations, and treat me like I was temporary. I bit my tongue because I loved her and figured they'd warm up eventually. I was wrong. The night everything changed started innocently enough. My girlfriend had invited me to her friend's birthday party at some upscale restaurant downtown. I dressed well, brought a gift for the birthday girl, and prepared myself for another evening of subtle hostility disguised as friendly banter. It started before we even sat down. The birthday girl looked at the gift I'd brought, a nice bottle of wine I'd researched carefully, and made some comment about how she only drank French wine, not whatever domestic garbage this was. The others laughed. My girlfriend just smiled awkwardly and said nothing. During dinner, they talked around me like I wasn't there. When I tried to contribute to conversations, they'd either ignore me completely or respond with condescending little comments. One of them asked what I did for work. Then when I told her I was in tech, she rolled her eyes and said something about how boring computer people were. Another made a joke about my haircut. A third commented on my choice of restaurant appetizer like it was some kind of character flaw. My girlfriend sat there through all of it, occasionally laughing along with their jokes at my expense. Every time I caught her eye, she'd give me a look that said, "Just go along with it," or "Don't make this weird." The breaking point came when one of them spilled red wine on my shirt, accidentally, then made a big show of offering to help clean it while making jokes about how clumsy she was. As she dabbed at my shirt with a napkin, she whispered just loud enough for the others to hear that maybe I should stick to white wine since I clearly couldn't handle the good stuff. They all burst into laughter. My girlfriend laughed too. I excused myself to the bathroom to clean up and collect my thoughts. When I came back, I could hear them talking about me. They weren't even trying to be quiet. One was saying something about how my girlfriend could do so much better. Another was making fun of the way I'd pronounced some word earlier. They were having the time of their lives. I sat back down and finished my meal in silence. My girlfriend kept shooting me looks, probably worried I was going to make a scene. I wasn't. I was planning. After dinner, we went back to my girlfriend's apartment. She could tell I was upset and finally asked me what was wrong. I told her exactly what I thought about her friend's behavior and how it made me feel that she just sat there and let it happen. She got defensive immediately. She said her friends were just being themselves and that they were actually really great people once you got to know them. She said I was being too sensitive and that maybe I just didn't understand their sense of humor. She said they'd been drinking and I shouldn't take everything so seriously. Then she said the words that sealed everything. If I didn't like her friends, that was my problem. I looked at her for a long moment and told her she was absolutely right. It was my problem, and I was going to solve it. She asked what I meant by that, but I just said I needed some time to think. I kissed her goodnight and left, my mind already working on exactly how I was going to handle this. See, here's what my girlfriend and her friends didn't know about me. I wasn't just some boring tech guy. I was a cybersecurity specialist with a very particular set of skills and a very thorough understanding of how people's digital lives could unravel with the right pressure applied in the right places. I spent the weekend doing research. Social media accounts, dating profiles, professional networks, email patterns, shopping habits. These people had left digital footprints everywhere, and they weren't nearly as careful as they thought they were. The birthday girl was cheating on her long-term boyfriend with her personal trainer. She thought she was being discreet with her encrypted messaging apps and carefully timed gym sessions, but she'd made mistakes. Screenshots existed. Location data told stories. Credit card records painted pictures. The wine snob had been stealing from her company's petty cash fund for months, covering it up with creative expense reports and inflated receipt claims. She thought she was clever, but accounting software keeps logs that most people don't know how to access. The one who spilled wine on me was married, but had been maintaining an active dating profile and meeting up with matches when her husband traveled for work. She'd been sloppy about using different photos and hadn't considered how easy it was to cross-reference location data from her social media posts. The others had their own secrets. Plagiarized work projects, fake charity donations claimed on tax returns, inappropriate relationships with subordinates at work. The kind of stuff that ruins careers and relationships when it comes to light. I didn't hack anything. I didn't break any laws. I just knew where to look and how to connect dots that these people had carelessly scattered across the internet. Public records, social media posts, professional directories. It was all there for someone who knew how to find it. The plan was simple. Give each of them a chance to experience the same humiliation they'd given me, but amplified and with consequences that mattered. I started with anonymous tips. The birthday girl's boyfriend received copies of her messages with her trainer, along with receipts showing hotel charges that coincided with her extended gym sessions. Her company's HR department got detailed documentation of the wine snob's expense account irregularities. The married woman's husband got a carefully curated package of evidence about her dating profile activities. But I wasn't done. These people had made my girlfriend part of their toxic circle, and I wanted to make sure she understood exactly who she was choosing over me. I created a group chat, anonymously, of course, and added all of them to it. Then I started sharing what I'd found. Not just the evidence of their individual secrets, but screenshots of conversations where they'd talked about each other behind their backs. Messages where the birthday girl had called the wine snob desperate. Posts where the married one had made fun of another's weight gain. Comments where they'd collectively trashed each other's career choices, relationship decisions, and personal insecurities. I'd found years of fake friendship and mutual backstabbing. They'd all been pretending to like each other while systematically undermining and gossiping about one another behind closed doors. The group chat became a battlefield as they turned on each other with remarkable speed. Within 48 hours, the birthday girl was single and facing a disciplinary review at work. The wine snob was suspended pending investigation, and her other friends had blocked her on everything after seeing what she'd really said about them. The married woman was facing divorce papers and had been kicked out of 2 other friend groups who'd seen the evidence of her serial cheating. But the real masterpiece was what happened to their entire social circle. See, when people discover that their closest friends have been systematically lying and betraying each other for years, trust becomes impossible. The group chat evidence I'd shared didn't just expose individual secrets. It revealed that their entire friendship was built on deception and mutual manipulation. They started questioning everything. Old conversations took on new meanings. Past events looked different through the lens of the betrayals I'd exposed. Alliances shifted, accusations flew, and within a week, the tight-knit group that had seemed so powerful had completely imploded. My girlfriend called me 3 days into the chaos. Her friends were all fighting with each other, and somehow it had all started with an anonymous message that exposed their secrets. She was confused and upset because her entire social circle was destroying itself, and she didn't understand why. She asked if I wanted to get dinner and talk. She said she'd been thinking about what happened at the restaurant, and maybe her friends had been a little out of line. She said she was sorry for not standing up for me, and that maybe we could work things out. I told her I appreciated the apology, but I'd already solved my problem exactly like I said I would. Her friends would never disrespect me again because they were too busy dealing with the consequences of disrespecting each other. I explained that I'd simply given them all the opportunity to see who their friends really were. She got quiet for a long time. Then she asked if I was the one who had exposed everyone's secrets. I told her I'd merely compiled publicly available information and allowed people to make informed decisions about their relationships. I hadn't created any of their problems. I'd just made them visible. She accused me of ruining her friends' lives over a dinner party disagreement. I reminded her that I hadn't forced any of them to cheat, steal, or lie to each other for years. I just made sure everyone knew the truth about the people they were calling friends. She said what I'd done was cruel and manipulative. I agreed completely. I told her I'd learned from the best. Her and her friends had spent months showing me exactly how cruel and manipulative people could be. I just applied those lessons more effectively than they had. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me. She tried calling back a few times over the next week, but I didn't answer. There wasn't anything left to say. Update 1. 2 weeks later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that my ex-girlfriend was having a rough time. Her entire social circle had imploded so completely that she was essentially friendless. The birthday girl had moved back home after her life fell apart. The wine snob was facing criminal charges for embezzlement. The married woman was in the middle of a messy divorce and had been blacklisted from several social groups. The others had scattered to different friend groups or were dealing with their own consequences from the revealed secrets. None of them were speaking to each other anymore, and they'd all blocked my ex-girlfriend on social media because they blamed her for bringing me around in the first place. My ex had tried to reach out to other people in their extended social network, but the story of what happened had spread quickly. Everyone knew that her boyfriend had somehow orchestrated the destruction of her entire friend group, and most people didn't want to risk getting involved with someone who came with that kind of drama. She'd started seeing a therapist, according to what I heard, trying to understand how her life had changed so dramatically so quickly. She'd also apparently tried to warn other people about me, telling them I was dangerous and manipulative, but most people just saw it as a bitter ex trying to cause problems. I felt no sympathy for her situation. She'd made her choice that night at the restaurant when she chose to laugh along with people who were deliberately humiliating me. She doubled down on that choice when she told me that not liking her friends was my problem. I'd simply taken her advice and solved my problem in the most permanent way possible. Update 2. A month after the initial implosion, I ran into my ex-girlfriend at a coffee shop. She looked tired and stressed, but she approached me anyway. She said she needed to understand why I'd done what I did and whether I felt any remorse about destroying so many people's lives. I told her I felt exactly as much remorse as she'd felt while watching her friends humiliate me for months. I explained that every single thing I'd exposed had been true, and that if the truth destroyed their lives, maybe their lives deserved to be destroyed. She said that everyone makes mistakes, and that what I'd done was disproportionate to what had happened at the dinner. I reminded her that the dinner wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of months of disrespect that she'd enabled and participated in. I told her that I'd given all of them exactly what they'd given me: public humiliation and social isolation. She asked if I'd ever loved her or if I'd just been planning revenge the whole time. I told her I had loved her, which was why her betrayal had hurt so much. If I hadn't cared about her, I would have just walked away instead of teaching her and her friends the kind of lesson they'd clearly never learned before. She started crying and said she was sorry for everything that had happened. She said she understood now how wrong her friends had been and how wrong she'd been not to defend me. She asked if there was any way we could try again, maybe start fresh without the toxic influences that had poisoned our relationship. I looked at her for a long moment and told her that some problems, once solved, stay solved. She'd shown me who she really was when it mattered, and I'd shown her who I really was in response. We were both exactly the people we'd chosen to be, and there was no going back from that. She asked what she was supposed to do now, with no friends and no support system. I suggested she might want to consider why she'd surrounded herself with people who were capable of such cruelty, and whether she might want to work on becoming the kind of person who wouldn't enable that behavior in others. Then I wished her luck and left. I never saw her again. Update 3. 6 months later, I learned the final chapter of this story through a former mutual friend. My ex-girlfriend had indeed been working with a therapist and had apparently made some significant changes in her life. She'd taken responsibility for her role in enabling her friend's toxic behavior and had been working on understanding why she'd been drawn to that kind of social dynamic. The birthday girl had moved to another city and was slowly rebuilding her life. The wine snob had served some jail time, but was apparently trying to make amends for what she'd done. The married woman's divorce had been finalized, and she was also in therapy dealing with her issues. None of them had reconnected with each other or with my ex-girlfriend. The friendship group was permanently destroyed, and everyone involved had been forced to confront some ugly truths about themselves and their relationships. My ex-girlfriend had apparently told her therapist that she understood now that I'd been right, that her friend's treatment of me had been unacceptable, and that her failure to defend me had been a betrayal of our relationship. But she'd also said that my response had taught her something important about choosing partners who handle conflict in healthy ways. When I heard all this, I realized that my revenge had been more successful than I'd originally planned. I hadn't just destroyed her toxic friend group. I'd forced everyone involved to confront the reality of who they were and what they'd been doing to each other. Some of them had used that confrontation to become better people. As for me, I'd learned some important lessons too. I'd learned that I was capable of being more ruthless than I'd ever imagined when pushed too far. I'd learned that I had skills that could destroy people's lives if I chose to use them that way. And I'd learned that sometimes the most effective response to being underestimated is to show people exactly what they've chosen to underestimate. I'd also learned that I wanted to be with someone who would stand up for me when it mattered, not someone who would throw me under the bus to maintain social harmony with toxic people. The next relationship I got into, I made sure to pay attention to how my partner treated people who couldn't offer them anything in return. It turned out to be an excellent predictor of character. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. My ex-girlfriend had been right. Her friends being disrespectful was my problem. I'd solved it exactly like I said I would, and the solution had been permanent and effective. They never disrespected me again because they were all too busy dealing with the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes people need to learn that their actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences come from directions they never saw coming. I'd been underestimated and dismissed as just some boring tech guy who would quietly tolerate whatever treatment they wanted to give me. They'd been wrong about that, and by the time they realized their mistake, it was far too late to do anything about it. The problem had been solved, permanently and completely, exactly as promised.